She changed the locks right after the funeral, and that's when my revenge began. They say grief makes you weak. They're wrong. Grief sharpens you. It strips away the noise until all that's left is the truth, cold, surgical, impossible to ignore. When my son, Ethan Langston, was lowered into the ground that gray afternoon in Charlotte, North Carolina, I thought I'd already seen the worst a man could feel. I was wrong again. Because 3 hours later, I watched his widow, Clara Hastings, drive from the cemetery straight to a hardware store, buy a new set of locks, and change them on what used to be our front door. She didn't even look at me, just tossed me 10 minutes to pack my things. 10 minutes to erase 30 years of fatherhood. That was the moment I stopped being a grieving father and became something else. I've spent my entire life studying digital fingerprints, the lies people leave behind in their data. For 30 years, I worked as a federal cyber forensics expert, tracking men who thought they were smarter than the system. But I never expected the next criminal I'd face would be family. Family drama cuts deeper than any headline. Family betrayal rewires your soul. And when betrayal meets technology, the truth always leaves a trail. Clara thought she was clever, the grieving widow posing for sympathy posts, hashtags about love and loss. Her tears collected likes, her sorrow went viral. But behind those perfectly filtered photos was theft, quiet, organized digital theft. She forged my son's will, drained his foundation, and tried to erase his legacy. And for a while, she almost succeeded. This isn't just another story about loss. It's about revenge, justice, and the power of silence. It's about how one man turned his pain into precision, how data became a weapon, and how every secret leaves evidence. In a world obsessed with noise, I chose silence, not weakness, but strategy. Because the quiet ones don't yell. We build systems that thieves can't escape. So if you think this is just another family feud, think again. This is a true American revenge story, one built on logic, grief, and justice. A father versus greed. Truth versus deception. Family drama meets FBI revenge. It's about the moment when betrayal crosses the line and grief turns into a mission. Before it's over, you'll understand one thing: in the age of data, no lie stays buried forever. Every click, every signature, every tear leaves a timestamp, and I know how to read them. This is my story. The foundation heist. The night silence became my weapon, and truth went viral. She changed the locks right after the funeral, and that's when my revenge began. The afternoon sun was still low enough to cast long shadows across Ethan's porch when I pulled up in my old black Ford. The funeral lilies were still on the seat beside me, wrapped in a white ribbon that said, "Beloved son." I remember thinking how quiet the house looked, how wrong it felt to see it without his laughter echoing through the hallway. Then I saw the van parked in the driveway, Locksmith Services of Charlotte, and I knew something wasn't right. Clara Hastings was standing at the front door, still wearing her black dress from the funeral. Her hair was perfect, not a single strand out of place, and her heels clicked against the wood porch like the punctuation marks of arrogance. She didn't look at me when I stepped out of the truck. "You have 10 minutes to get your stuff, old man. This is my house now." 10 minutes. I'd given her 3 years of trust, opened my home to her, paid the hospital bills when Ethan's insurance ran dry, and she was giving me 10 minutes. I could have yelled. I could have reminded her that I built that deck with Ethan last summer, that every nail in that house carried his sweat and mine. But I didn't. I just looked at her and smiled. Not out of kindness, out of control. 30 years in federal forensics teaches you that the loudest person in the room is usually the dumbest. She thought she was throwing me out. She was just drawing her own map to destruction. When she handed me the handwritten will, she held it like a trophy. The paper looked old enough, the handwriting close enough to Ethan's, but there was something wrong with the ink, too shiny, too fresh. My eyes caught a faint smudge on her left hand, the kind of stain you get from testing a new pen. "Everything goes to me," she said, her voice syrup sweet. "The house, the business, the foundation, all of it." I took the document and nodded. My fingers didn't shake. My heart didn't race. But I quietly lifted my phone, tapped once, and snapped a photo. Old habits. Reflexes from a lifetime of catching liars. You don't argue with a thief, you document them. Clara walked through the living room like she was inspecting a new property. She touched the frame of Ethan's graduation photo, tilted it straight, and sighed. "It's unhealthy to keep all these pictures around," she said. "I need to move forward." Move forward 4 days after burying her husband. She was already talking about redecorating, repainting, replacing. When she reached the kitchen, she pulled a bottle of imported champagne from the fridge, the same one I'd stocked before the funeral for guests who never came. She poured herself a glass, looked at me over the rim and said, "You can leave the TV. It's too heavy for you anyway." Outside, the locksmith was finishing the new locks. I could hear the electric drill whine a mechanical heartbeat that matched the rhythm of my pulse. Each screw, each turn, each click, sealing me out of my own son's life. But the thing about locks, every lock leaves data. Every code leaves fingerprints. And I'd built my career on finding what people thought they could hide. When I turned to leave, Clara followed me to the door. "Derek's moving in next week," she said. I stopped. "Derek, my boyfriend. We've been together 8 months. Ethan knew." She said it so casually, like she was discussing a grocery list. 8 months. Ethan had been dead for 4 days. 8 months meant she'd been cheating while he was still alive, still fighting cancer, still holding on to hope. "Don't give me that look, Robert," she said. "I came back to take care of him, because it was the right thing to do, because I'm a good person." I remember the air felt heavier then, like gravity was punishing me for not reacting. I could smell the faint perfume she always wore, vanilla and steel, a liar's scent. "The funeral was beautiful," I said quietly. "It was expensive," she replied, $47,000, but good thing the foundation covered it. Ethan would have wanted the best. I didn't respond, but in my head a note clicked into place. 47,000 for a service that should have cost 15. Fraud isn't about numbers. It's about patterns, and she'd just shown me her first. I loaded my boxes into the truck photo albums, my FBI retirement plaque, Ethan's old baseball glove, the one he used in Little League. As I closed the door, I caught her reflection in the window. She was smiling, tapping on her phone, maybe texting that Derek guy, maybe bragging. I didn't care. She'd already written her confession in pixels. As I pulled away, I glanced at the rearview mirror and saw her silhouette in the doorway, a widow with new locks holding a stolen life. But what she didn't understand was that she hadn't locked me out. She'd locked herself in, because every lie she told, every dollar she moved, every fake document she filed would leave a digital fingerprint. And I was the man who wrote the manual on finding them. When I reached the end of the street, I stopped the car and looked back at the house one last time. The porch light flickered like it used to when Ethan forgot to replace the bulb. For a moment, I could almost hear his voice again, laughing alive, building something that mattered. Then it was gone. All that remained was silence, and in that silence, I made a promise. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't beg. I'd do what I've always done, follow the data. And when the truth surfaced, I'd make sure the world saw it burn. Clara thought she'd buried Ethan. What she didn't know was that his legacy was already encrypted in every file, every record, every piece of code. She could fake a signature, but she couldn't fake a pattern. And patterns always tell the truth. Grief can make monsters look human, especially when the cameras are on. The morning after Clara threw me out of Ethan's house, I watched her face on local television. She was standing in front of a white banner that read, "The Ethan Langston Foundation," smiling for the cameras, her eyes perfectly red from carefully timed tears. She spoke in a soft voice, thanking the community for their support during this painful transition. Behind her, volunteers handed out pamphlets, and a news reporter nodded sympathetically. The grieving widow, graceful, selfless, inspiring. But I knew better. I knew the difference between sorrow and performance. She wasn't grieving. She was rehearsing. Her voice trembled at all the right moments. She touched her chest when she mentioned Ethan's courage. She even looked down and whispered, "He'd want us to keep giving." And the crowd believed her. Donations doubled that week. Corporate sponsors called. Hashtag spread. The foundation's social media page gained 10,000 followers overnight. Clara had turned death into marketing. I watched her interviews from my small apartment downtown, a temporary rental that smelled of bleach and tired carpet. The television flickered with her image, her perfectly symmetrical sorrow, and something inside me hardened. In every post, every caption, every thank you, I saw another layer of manipulation. She wasn't helping families fight cancer. She was helping herself. 2 days later, I drove past the house. The lawn had been trimmed, the blinds replaced, and there was a new car in the driveway, a black Tesla Model Y, brand new, still with the dealer tag. Ethan's garage, where he and I once built prototype security systems for small businesses, was now filled with shopping bags and designer boxes. I stopped the car a few houses away and just watched. It looked like grief had a spending problem. When Clara opened the door, a man stepped out behind her tall mid-30s, slick hair tech bro, confidence oozing from his every move. Liam Carter, software developer, strategic consultant, my son's replacement. He carried a laptop bag over his shoulder and kissed Clara on the cheek before heading to the car. She laughed at something he said, the same laugh Ethan once told me he loved because it sounded like sunlight. Now it sounded like static. I sat there in the car, gripping the steering wheel, and forced myself to breathe. The worst part wasn't seeing her move on. It was realizing she had already been gone long before Ethan's body turned cold. 8 months of betrayal dressed up as devotion. That night I couldn't sleep. I scrolled through her social media pages, the carefully curated grief machine. Photos of her lighting candles at Ethan's grave, captions like "Grief never ends, but neither does love." Thousands of likes, comments full of sympathy, and then buried between the condolences were the Tells designer tags, high-end restaurants, weekend getaways. Healing in style. Widow strong. One video caught my attention, a live stream from the foundation's office. Clara sat at Ethan's old desk, talking about expanding partnerships. On the shelf behind her was the plaque I'd given Ethan when Blue Peak Technologies hit its first $1 million year. For building systems that protect the vulnerable. The irony was suffocating. I remembered the nights Ethan and I spent in that same room, cables everywhere, empty coffee cups, whiteboards filled with ideas. He used to say, "Dad's cybersecurity is about trust. People give us their secrets. We protect them." He believed in doing good even when no one watched. And now the woman who pretended to love him was using his name to fund her luxury wardrobe. I decided to pay a visit. When I knocked on the office door, Clara greeted me with the kind of smile politicians reserve for voters. "Robert," she said, voice dripping honey, "I didn't expect to see you here. I just wanted to see how things were running," I replied, scanning the room. There were new monitors, expensive ergonomic chairs, a designer coffee machine. None of this existed when Ethan was alive. "We're modernizing," Clara said. Ethan had such a great vision. "I'm just carrying the torch." Liam appeared from the back room, laptop in hand, grinning like he owned the place. "Mr. Langston," he said, pretending familiarity, "we're implementing some automation to make the foundation more efficient. Less manual work, more results. Efficient. That word again. It always hides a crime." I looked at the framed picture of Ethan on the wall, smiling, unaware, too kind for this world. "Ethan used to believe in helping people, not managing them," I said. Clara's smile didn't falter. "We're just updating things. Progress, you know. You of all people should understand how fast technology moves." "Technology doesn't move," I said. "People do, and sometimes they move in the wrong direction." Liam laughed softly, dismissive. "Old school thinking. Data is everything now. If only he knew how right he was." When I left, Clara followed me out. "I know you're still hurting," she said, lowering her voice. "But Ethan wanted me to have control. He trusted me." I stopped at the doorway, turned to her and said, "No, he trusted you to love him. Control was never part of the deal." For a second, the mask slipped. Her eyes hardened, her jaw clenched, and there it was, the real Clara. The one who saw compassion as weakness, loyalty as leverage. Then just as quickly, she smiled again. "You should get some rest, Robert," she said sweetly. "Grief can make you paranoid." I smiled back. So can guilt. As I walked away, I heard the door close behind me, the sound of another lock clicking into place. Another barrier between truth and lies. But locks are physical things. I deal in data, and data never forgets. That night, as I sat in my apartment, surrounded by Ethan's old belongings, I realized something. Clara wasn't just pretending to mourn. She was rewriting history, one press release at a time. She'd weaponized sympathy. She'd turned kindness into currency. And everyone was buying it. But I wasn't everyone. I was the man who built careers out of catching people like her. In every selfie, every post, every forged invoice, I saw breadcrumbs. And I was already tracing them back to the truth. The world saw a heartbroken widow. I saw a criminal with excellent lighting. Silence doesn't mean peace. Sometimes it's the sound of strategy. That night, the city outside my apartment window was restless cars humming down Tryon Street, the neon reflection of Charlotte's skyline bouncing off the glass. I couldn't sleep. My body was tired, but my mind kept replaying the same scenes like corrupted footage on an endless loop. Ethan's laughter in the garage, the sound of Clara's heels against the porch, the way the funeral flowers smelled like plastic, and then the silence, always the silence. It pressed against my chest like weight I couldn't lift. Grief isn't loud, it's methodical. It sneaks into every corner of your mind and rearranges the furniture of your soul. I sat at my old oak desk, the one Ethan and I built together years ago, sanding it smooth while he was still in college. On top of it was a single USB drive engraved with his initials. He'd given it to me 2 months before he died, saying, "Just in case something happens." "Dad, you always said data never lies." I never opened it, not because I forgot, but because I wasn't ready. But tonight, surrounded by the debris of a life that no longer made sense, I plugged it in. The screen blinked. A folder appeared, Foundation Reports, Ethan Private, Clara Notes. My stomach tightened. Each file was dated within his last 3 months alive. The first document opened with a line in Ethan's handwriting, "Dad knows investigations." Should I tell him about Clara? Maybe I'll handle it myself. The rest of the page was filled with financial numbers, account references, vendor IDs, a trail. My son had started his own investigation before he died. He'd seen what Clara was doing, and he was trying to stop her. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and felt the room spin. The man I raised, the boy who once cried over a failed science fair project, who used to sneak candy into movie theaters, had been quietly fighting corruption in his final days, too sick to tell anyone. He'd inherited more from me than I realized: the hunger for truth, the obsession with justice. And now that hunger was mine again. But alongside that surge of determination came guilt, raw and cutting. Where was I when he needed me most? I'd been busy consulting, chasing old habits, pretending retirement meant relevance. I could still hear his voice from our last phone call, soft, tired. "Dad, don't worry about me. Just promise me one thing. If something ever happens, you'll protect what I built." I'd laughed it off then. I thought he meant the business, the foundation. Now I knew he meant his name. I clicked through more files. Photos of donation checks, scanned receipts, transfers labeled consulting. Clara's digital fingerprints were everywhere, timestamps matching her shopping sprees, matching Liam Carter's shell company accounts. My son had found it all, documented it, but never got the chance to reveal it. That realization hit me harder than grief itself. He died trying to defend his legacy, and I let a thief bury it with him. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, the good one I'd been saving since his graduation. It burned like truth down my throat. On the wall across from me was Ethan's old baseball glove, mounted in a simple frame. The leather was worn, the initials, faint EL. I remembered the day we bought it. He was 9, his hands too small, but he wanted to play with the big kids. "You can't rush growth," I'd told him. "You can only prepare for it." Now that line came back to me, bitter and prophetic. He'd prepared me for this without even knowing it. As I stared at that glove, a memory unfolded, the two of us sitting in the backyard, the smell of fresh-cut grass, fireflies blinking between the trees. He'd asked, "Dad, why do you always stay so quiet when people insult you?" I told him, "Because silence buys time, and time buys advantage." He smiled. "That's kind of scary." "No," I said, "it's survival." That memory, once tender, now felt like a manual for what I had to become again. I opened his last email, dated 2 days before his death. It wasn't finished. It stopped mid-sentence. "I think Clara's using the foundation's vendor accounts to nothing more." But attached to it were screenshots of payment logs, an Excel file, and one image, a photo of Clara and Liam at a dinner time stamped 9:48 p.m., taken from a hidden camera. Ethan had been watching her. I pressed my palms to my eyes, forcing the tears back. Crying felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. Grief demanded action. If I wanted peace, I had to earn it. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about restoration, about rewriting the ending my son never got to finish. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, and for a moment lightning illuminated the city skyline. I saw my reflection in the window, older, colder, a ghost of who I was. "You did good, kid," I whispered. "Now let me finish what you started." I powered down the computer, slid the USB into my pocket, and felt its weight light as plastic, heavy as purpose. Every bite inside it was a heartbeat of truth. Ethan had trusted me to be the firewall, and I'd failed once. I wouldn't fail again. That night before I closed my eyes, I made a list in my notebook: names, dates, accounts, tasks. The same way I used to build federal cases. Only this time, the case was personal. No badge, no partner. Just me, a USB, and a silent promise. Grief had taken my son. Betrayal had taken his legacy. But I still had the one weapon neither could touch: the discipline of patience. Revenge doesn't need rage. It needs accuracy. It needs evidence. It needs silence. And as the clock hit midnight, I whispered the words that would become my law. Justice delayed isn't justice denied, it's justice perfected. Revenge isn't rage, it's math. When the anger finally cooled, what remained was focus. Cold, disciplined focus. I'd spent decades building forensic systems for the Bureau, dissecting human deceit down to the pixel. Clara Hastings and her new partner, Liam Carter, had no idea what kind of man they'd provoked. They thought I was just an old widower with fading eyesight and too many regrets. They didn't know I'd once traced a Russian hacker across 8 VPNs in 3 continents before breakfast. This wasn't about grief anymore. This was about reconstruction of truth, of justice, of my son's name. The plan started simple: follow the data. The first step was the will. The image I'd taken that day outside Ethan's house, the supposed handwritten document Clara waved like a trophy, became the foundation of my investigation. I loaded the photo onto my secured workstation, magnified the metadata. The timestamp showed something off, created 3:16 p.m., the same hour the funeral procession ended. The metadata tag also contained a file name reference: Office Max Scanner Model 3420. I recognized the signature from hundreds of forensic cases. That scanner embedded a digital watermark with every scan. Clara hadn't written that will by candlelight in grief. She'd typed it, printed it, forged the signature, and scanned it at a public copy center. Only an amateur forger leaves breadcrumbs that loud. I picked up the phone and called an old contact agent, Laura Chen, now in digital evidence at Quantico. She owed me a favor. I sent her the image with a note: need ink authentication, pressure depth, and chronological trace off the record. She replied 3 hours later: ink compounds too new. Pressure inconsistent with natural writing. 93% chance forgery. The number didn't surprise me. It confirmed what my instincts already knew. Ethan's real signature was unique. He pressed harder on the downward stroke of his L, something you only learn after seeing 1,000 contracts signed by your own child. The forgery flattened that pressure. It mimicked handwriting, but not emotion. Data never lies. Emotion always does. I created a timeline: the day of the funeral, the Office Max scan, the next day's foundation meeting. Then I cross-referenced public IRS filings for the Ethan Langston Foundation. Within 2 hours, the numbers screamed corruption. 24 identical withdrawals each, exactly $7,495 labeled consulting. Repetition like that wasn't coincidence. It was laundering. Clara was smart enough to stay under the $10,000 flag threshold, but dumb enough to think precision hid intention. Every transaction fed into 2 shell companies: Consulting Solutions, LLC, and Administrative Services Group, both registered to the same P.O. box in Raleigh. The listed director, Liam Carter. I smiled. Patterns were forming. People lie. Algorithms don't. Next, I traced the IP addresses accessing the Foundation's online banking portal. The logins came from Clara's home router, 192.168.11.5, linked to her Spectrum account. That same address accessed both shell company dashboards and Liam's GitHub repo. Every digital footprint told the same story. She wasn't just complicit. She was the architect. I compiled everything: 847 pages of logs, screenshots, metadata captures, bank trails. I stored them on 3 encrypted drives labeled EL, Case 1, hidden in separate safety boxes across Charlotte. I'd learned long ago that truth needed redundancy, but numbers weren't enough. The story had to breathe. I needed faces, emotions, proof that the public would understand. So I started shadowing her. Every Wednesday afternoon, Clara visited a luxury spa uptown, then lunch at Bistro 49 with Liam. I'd sit 2 tables away, order black coffee, and record their conversations with a concealed mic in my tie clip, a relic from my bureau days. Their voices were clear, careless. Liam bragged about foundation payouts and crypto transfers. Clara laughed, calling donors walking ATMs with cancer guilt. My hands tightened around the cup, but I stayed silent. Silence was currency. Every second of restraint earned me another inch of victory. After 2 weeks, I had hours of recordings, time-stamped and transcribed, enough to build a preliminary brief. I sent it anonymously to Detective Aaron Cole, a homicide detective I trusted from Ethan's case. The subject line read, "Financial homicide, different weapon." Aaron called within hours. "Robert, tell me you didn't do what I think you did." "Not yet," I said. "I'm just making sure the right people are watching before the wrong people destroy evidence." He sighed. "You always did know how to make a mess look clean." "I prefer calling it justice with documentation." That night I mapped the final piece, the gala. The Foundation's annual charity event 2 months away, hosted at the Charlotte Country Club. Clara was planning to expand operations and publicly announce Liam as strategic director. I couldn't have scripted a better stage for collapse. All the sponsors, donors, and press would be there. The perfect audience for revelation. Preparation became ritual. Each morning I reviewed case files over black coffee, double-checking every link, every byte. I built an automated presentation on my old ThinkPad, a slideshow of bank transfers, shell company registrations, timestamps, and Clara's recorded voice admitting to embezzlement. I rehearsed timing like an orchestra conductor. Revenge isn't improvisation, it's engineering. But even as I prepared, memories kept cutting through. Ethan's smile, his faith in people, his belief that good always wins quietly. I wondered what he'd think if he saw me now, his father turning grief into warfare. Maybe he'd understand. Maybe he'd even approve. Because this wasn't vengeance born from hate, it was protection born from love. One evening as I triple-checked the files, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Clara's number. "You still stalking me, old man?" I froze. She knew something. Maybe she'd seen me at the restaurant. Maybe Liam had recognized me. But then another text followed. "You should stop embarrassing yourself. Ethan's gone. Move on." For a moment, my thumb hovered over the reply button. Then I typed, "I don't move on, I move forward." And I hit send. That was the last message I ever sent her before the gala. By then, the plan was flawless. Copies of the evidence were scheduled to email the press and law enforcement automatically at 9:15 p.m. Mid-speech, Agent Laura Chen would attend as a donor wearing a hidden body cam. Detective Cole would sit near the exit. All I had to do was walk in, stand in the back, and let the truth detonate itself. I remember closing my laptop the night before, whispering to the framed photo on my desk. "We're almost there, son. Justice may move slow, but it never stops." Outside, the city was quiet again, but this time silence didn't feel heavy. It felt like momentum, the kind that builds before impact. In the language of revenge, timing is grammar. And tomorrow night, every sentence I'd written would end with a period shaped like her downfall. Every lie eventually meets the one person patient enough to measure it. The night of the Foundation Gala arrived dressed in glitter and hypocrisy. Charlotte Country Club gleamed under chandeliers, heavy enough to crush the truth they tried to hide. Every guest wore polished grief diamond silk and carefully rehearsed sympathy. I stood near the back entrance suit, pressed tie, dark expression neutral, just another silent donor. No one looked twice at the old man sipping club soda, and that was exactly the point. Visibility invites danger. Invisibility delivers justice. At 8:57 p.m., the ballroom lights dimmed. A video montage filled the screen clips of Ethan smiling during hospital visits, his voice echoing through speakers. Hope is stronger than fear. My throat tightened. For a fleeting second, I wanted to believe the moment was genuine, that maybe even Clara felt remorse. Then the lights rose, and there she was, Clara Hastings wrapped in a crimson gown, like sin wearing confidence. Liam Carter followed his tie, crooked, his smile expensive. They took the stage as applause washed over them like bleach, loud, sterile, meaningless. "Good evening," Clara began, her voice soft, the professional widow tone she'd perfected. "Tonight we celebrate Ethan's legacy, a legacy that lives through the Langston Foundation's expansion into new partnerships. She gestured toward the banner behind her growth impact integrity. The irony could have powered the city grid. I watched her pace the stage, reading from a teleprompter. This year alone, she continued, we've allocated over $180,000 to streamline operations, ensuring every dollar creates real impact for families in need. Her tone was calm, proud. But those of us fluent in data knew what streamline really meant: embezzle. My watch buzzed once the prearranged signal. 9:14 p.m. Agent Laura Chen was seated at table 12, her small body cam already transmitting. Detective Aaron Cole waited near the exit. At 9:15 p.m., sharp, my email scheduler would send every document, every recording, every piece of evidence to 50 reporters, the state attorney's office, and the board of directors. The truth was loaded. It only needed a trigger. Clara lifted her glass. To Ethan, she said, her smile trembling just enough to look human. May his vision guide us always. I stepped forward. He had a different vision, Clara. I said, my voice cutting through the applause. Heads turned, her smile froze. I walked toward the stage, slowly, methodically, like a surgeon approaching an open wound. He believed in helping people, not stealing from them. A hush fell over the room. The band stopped mid-note. The screen behind her flickered. My pre-programmed presentation had begun. First slide, bank transfers, Langston Foundation internal records. Lines of numbers scrolled across the massive LED screen. 24 identical withdrawals, each $7, $495, tag consulting. Then company registrations, Consulting Solutions, LLC Administrative Services Group, both traced to Liam Carter. Murmurs spread through the crowd like a spark meeting gasoline. What is this? Clara snapped, forcing a smile. Robert, this isn't appropriate. It's truth, I said. You remember truth, don't you? She tried to laugh it off. Everyone, please. This is a misunderstanding. The foundation has gone through audits. Everything is. Her voice broke when the next slide appeared, a recording. Her voice crystal clear, captured from my tie clip. Donors are just walking ATMs with cancer guilt. The ballroom gasped as if oxygen had been sucked out. Liam's face turned pale. His fingers twitched toward his phone, maybe to shut it down, maybe to run. But there was nowhere to go. Another clip played, Liam bragging, "We'll move the crypto through the shells. Nobody audits under 10 grand. Clara's voice followed perfect. By the time anyone notices, we'll be in the Caymans. The crowd's shock rippled louder than any music. Glasses clinked nervously. The board members whispered in panic. Reporters reached for phones. Clara's mask cracked completely. You recorded me," she stammered. I looked straight at her. "No, Clara. You recorded yourself. Every lie you told, every transfer you approved, every forged document, it's all digital. Data doesn't need witnesses. It keeps its own testimony." Behind me, the double doors opened. Laura Chen and Detective Cole stepped inside, flashing badges. The emblem of the FBI gleamed under the chandeliers. Clara tried to retreat, heels clicking against the stage like an execution countdown. "You can't do this," she hissed. "I'm not doing anything I said. The system you underestimated is." Liam tried to bolt, shoving past a table. 2 agents intercepted him before he reached the exit. Phones were out now. Half the audience was recording. Clara's perfect image, the grieving philanthropist, dissolved, live, her mascara streaking under hot stage lights. "Mrs. Hastings," Laura said formally, "you are under arrest for wire fraud, forgery, and embezzlement of charitable funds exceeding $180,000. As handcuffs clicked shut, Clara's gaze met mine. Wild, desperate, still trying to find a version of the truth she could control. "He loved me," she shouted. "Ethan loved me." "Yes," I said softly. "And you buried that love under greed." The agents led her away. The crowd remained frozen, a portrait of disbelief and betrayal. I turned back toward the screen. The final slide appeared automatically, a photo of Ethan holding a child at the cancer ward, smiling alive. The caption read, "Integrity is what you do when no one is watching." I felt the first tear slide down my cheek, quiet and uninvited. Revenge didn't feel like victory. It felt like release. The truth had spoken, not through rage, but through evidence. The same precision that once built my son's dream had now dismantled his betrayers. Reporters swarmed me as the agents escorted Liam and Clara out. "Mr. Langston, did you plan this?" "Did you know?" one asked. I looked at them. then at Ethan's face on the screen. I didn't plan revenge, I said. I planned accountability. There's a difference. The ballroom erupted again, flashes, questions, chaos, but inside me, there was only silence. A kind of peace born not from forgiveness, but from equilibrium. Justice had taken its time, but it had arrived. As I walked out of the ballroom, I passed by the charity banner that still hung above the entrance. Hope for families. I paused for a second and whispered to myself, now it means something again. Outside, the cool October air hit my face. The world felt lighter. I could almost hear Ethan's voice in the wind, steady, proud, amused. You always said silence was power, Dad. I smiled faintly. It still is, son. It still is. And that night under the streetlights of Charlotte, silence wasn't emptiness anymore. It was justice, clean, mathematical, and complete. Justice isn't loud. It echoes quietly in the ruins of lies. The morning after the gala, the headlines spread across every screen in North Carolina. Widow of tech philanthropist arrested for foundation fraud. The photos were brutal. Clara in handcuffs, mascara streaked red gown, torn at the shoulder, eyes wide in disbelief. Liam's mugshot was worse, smirking at first, then broken once he realized this wasn't a misunderstanding that could be paid off with lawyers. Their faces were plastered across national news by noon. Every network ran the same footage, her shouting, the crowd gasping, the agents reading charges aloud. The once beloved widow had become a symbol of greed. I watched from my apartment in silence. The phone rang non-stop, reporters, old colleagues, donors, even Ethan's college friends. Everyone wanted a comment. I didn't answer a single call. The truth didn't need a spokesperson. It had already spoken for itself. By the end of the week, Clara was indicted on 6 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of forgery and embezzlement exceeding $180,000. Liam faced conspiracy and money laundering. The FBI audit revealed more than we expected: crypto transfers to offshore wallets, hidden accounts in the Caymans, and falsified invoices dating back over a year. What they'd stolen wasn't just money. It was trust, Ethan's trust, the community's trust, the purity of a foundation meant to save children with cancer. You can rebuild buildings, not faith. The trial took 6 months. I attended every hearing, sitting quietly in the second row. The courtroom was cold, its air thick with the scent of paper and regret. Clara's lawyer tried to frame it as administrative mismanagement, but the evidence was overwhelming. My files, my recordings, Ethan's digital notes, the forensic reports, they painted a portrait no jury could ignore. When Clara took the stand, she wore gray, her hair darker, her charm dimmed. She spoke softly, trying to summon sympathy. I never meant to hurt anyone, she said, tears gathering like old friends. I loved Ethan. I only wanted to keep his dream alive. The prosecutor, Dana Reeves, didn't blink. By forging his will, by draining his foundation, by spending donor money on designer handbags, her tone was a blade. Clara broke. She turned to the judge, hands trembling. I didn't know how to stop. It got too big. The courtroom fell silent. For a moment, I saw not a villain, but a small, frightened person crushed under her own choices. Still, compassion couldn't rewrite facts. Guilt is a truth that even tears can't wash clean. When the verdict came, it was swift and precise. Clara Hastings, 18 months in federal prison, restitution ordered in full. Liam Carter, 2 years for conspiracy and financial misconduct. The judge's final words echoed in my head long after the gavel struck. Greed disguised as charity is the cruelest form of theft. As they led Clara away, she turned toward me. Eyes red, voice a whisper only I could hear. You ruined me. No, I said quietly. You did that yourself. I just kept the receipts. The courtroom emptied, but I stayed behind. I sat there alone as the bailiff cleared papers. For years, I'd chased justice through evidence, logic, data, and now that I'd found it, it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like silence again, a softer, cleaner silence. Justice doesn't cheer, it exhales. Over the next few months, the foundation went through reconstruction. Federal supervision replaced Clara's leadership. The board appointed 3 new members, Harold Grant, Susan Vale, and Peter Ng, honest people who'd once worked alongside Ethan. They reached out to me asking if I'd like to serve as an advisor. I agreed, not out of ambition, but out of duty. If Ethan's name was going to live, it would live with dignity. I donated my FBI pension to relaunch the Foundation's Community Family Support Program, the one Ethan dreamed of expanding before he died. Within a year, the Foundation had helped 112 families cover treatment costs and hospital housing. For the first time since the funeral, I saw good news linked to Ethan's name again. Then one morning a letter arrived. It was from Clara, written from the Federal Correctional Facility in Virginia. The handwriting was small, almost unfamiliar. Robert, I think about him every day. I know you hate me, but I did love him once. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to make peace with what I did. Maybe one day you can too. I read it twice, folded it, and placed it inside Ethan's notebook. Forgiveness wasn't mine to give, it belonged to time. But the fact that she'd written it meant the truth had done what punishment couldn't. It had forced reflection. The media eventually moved on. The story stopped trending. But every now and then someone would send me a message online. Your son inspired me. The Foundation helped my family. Thank you for keeping it alive. Each message felt like a small light cutting through the dark. In early spring, I visited the old Foundation office. The building smelled of fresh paint and hope. Ethan's photo still hung in the lobby, surrounded by drawings from children who'd beaten cancer. Under his picture, a new plaque read, "For the man who believed that truth protects." I stood there for a long time, tracing his smile with my eyes. I didn't cry this time. Grief had changed shape, no longer sharp, just quiet. Loss fades, love doesn't. That night, as the city lights flickered beyond the window, I realized the true cost of revenge. It doesn't destroy you. It reshapes you. It teaches you that justice, when earned without anger, becomes peace. I closed Ethan's notebook for the last time, whispered the same words I'd spoken the night before the gala. We did it, son, and for the first time in years, I slept without dreams. Forgiveness doesn't always speak. Sometimes it just breathes. 6 months had passed since the sentencing. Spring came slow that year in Charlotte, like the city itself needed time to heal from the headlines. The azaleas bloomed again, soft pink against the gray sidewalks, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't wake up with the weight of bitterness pressing against my chest. Justice had been served, but what remained was something quieter, the ache of unfinished love. You can win every battle in the courtroom and still lose pieces of yourself in the process. Revenge closes wounds, but it doesn't fill the emptiness they leave behind. I still visited Ethan's grave every Sunday, always at sunrise. It was the only hour the world felt honest. No news alerts, no noise, just the steady rhythm of birds and wind. I'd sit on the same old wooden bench across from his headstone, a cup of black coffee in hand, and talk to him like he was still there. Not about the case, that part was done, but about everything else. About the families the Foundation had helped, about how his old team at Blue Peak had doubled their outreach program, about the little boy named Marcus, who sent a crayon drawing that said, "Thank you, Ethan, for saving my dad." One morning as I sat there in the early mist, I saw someone standing a few rows down, a woman in a gray coat, head bowed. It took me a moment to recognize her. Clara. She wasn't the same woman who'd worn designer dresses and diamond earrings. Her hair was cut short, now streaked with silver. Her posture carried exhaustion, not arrogance. She was free-released early for good behavior and restitution cooperation. For a moment, I didn't move. Part of me wanted to walk away, avoid the discomfort of proximity, but another part, the one Ethan had nurtured in me, whispered, "Let her be human." She didn't notice me at first. She placed a small bouquet on Ethan's grave, simple daisies, the kind he used to buy for her when they first met. Her hands trembled slightly. Then she spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "I know I don't deserve to be here," she said, "but I came to say I'm sorry. For all of it." I stayed silent, hidden by the oak tree a few yards away. She didn't need an audience. Forgiveness isn't theater. It's confession in its rawest form, spoken not to erase the past, but to release the weight of it. She stood there for several minutes, murmuring things I couldn't hear. When she turned to leave, she saw me. Our eyes met across the dew-soaked grass, and for a heartbeat, the world went still. No words, no accusations, just two people bound by the same ghost. She opened her mouth to speak, but stopped herself, then nodded once, slow and deliberate. It wasn't an apology, it was acknowledgement. And for the first time, I nodded back. Not acceptance, not friendship, just recognition that pain had done its work on both of us. After she left, I walked to Ethan's headstone. The daisies still glistened with dew. I set my coffee cup beside them and whispered, "She came to say, sorry, kid. I think you'd want me to let her." The wind carried the scent of wet earth and spring grass. I took it as a sign. Ethan always said nature was how God talked without words. Maybe this was his way of answering. Over the next few weeks, small signs of peace kept finding me. The Foundation's quarterly report arrived showing record donations, $2.3 million raised enough to fund 2 new family housing projects. Each file bore Ethan's signature logo, now updated with the simple tagline, "Truth Protects." It was the line he'd written in his notebook years ago. I couldn't help but smile. At the reopening of the Foundation's main office, Agent Laura Chen surprised me with a framed certificate. In recognition of exceptional civilian contribution to justice and community integrity, it read. She handed it to me and said Ethan would be proud. I believed her. Later that evening, I returned home and found a letter waiting in my mailbox, no sender listed. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was from Clara. "Robert, I saw you today at the cemetery. Thank you for not walking away. I'm rebuilding my life working with a nonprofit that helps ex-offenders find work. It's not much, but it's something. I'll keep doing it in his name. I hope someday you find peace. You deserve it." I folded the letter carefully and placed it inside Ethan's notebook beside her first one from prison. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't a grand gesture. It was the quiet act of allowing life to continue. We were 2 broken people orbiting the same memory, and maybe that was enough. A month later, the Foundation held its annual benefit again. This time, no grand speeches, no flashing lights, just a gathering of families who'd been helped by Ethan's vision. A little girl walked up to me, holding a handmade card. "My mom says your son helped us," she said shyly. "Thank you for being his dad." Her words hit me harder than any verdict ever could. In that moment, forgiveness wasn't theoretical anymore. It was alive, breathing, passing from one generation to the next. As the sun set behind the city skyline, I looked up at the Foundation's sign glowing softly against the night. The Ethan Langston Foundation. Underneath, in smaller letters, built on truth. I stood there for a long time, listening to the hum of quiet conversations, laughter, and the music of people still alive, still believing. No one knew that I'd spent nights planning vengeance, building digital traps, cataloging every deceit. They only saw an old man standing beneath his son's name, smiling softly. And that was enough. Justice had been served in full. Clara had faced the law, but here, surrounded by the good Ethan had created, I finally understood the deeper lesson. Revenge in stories, but forgiveness writes new ones. I drove home under a sky washed clean by rain. The roads shimmered under the streetlights. Somewhere out there, Clara was probably starting over, and so was I. Neither of us erased the past, but we'd stopped letting it define the future. As I parked the car and stepped inside, I whispered one last thing into the quiet. "We're even now, son." Not in anger, but in peace. And for the first time since he died, the silence in the room didn't feel empty. It felt complete. The quietest revenge is living in peace while the guilty live with memory. In the end, it wasn't about the money. It was never about the will, the stolen accounts, or the digital evidence. It was about truth, the kind that doesn't scream for attention, but stands on its own, unshakable. Justice had done what it needed to do, and silence had carried it there. Ethan's name no longer lived in the shadow of corruption. It lived in hospitals and family homes, in the laughter of children whose parents could afford one more month of treatment because the Foundation stayed alive. That was his real legacy. I learned something through all this. Revenge doesn't heal you. Accountability does. You don't destroy darkness by matching its rage. You dismantle it piece by piece with facts, patience, and self-respect. You can't reason with liars, but you can outlast them. The truth will do the rest. Sometimes people ask me, "Robert, do you forgive her?" And the answer is, I don't need to. Forgiveness isn't always a gift you hand out. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to stop letting someone rent space in your heart. Clara's story ended in a courtroom. Mine continued in peace. That's the difference between revenge and resolution. I still visit the Foundation every week. New families come through the doors, tired, scared, holding on to hope the way Ethan once did. When I see them smile, I realize that justice didn't just protect Ethan's memory. It rebuilt something inside me too, faith that goodness, though quiet, always survives noise. And maybe that's what you came here to hear, that you can survive betrayal too. That even when life takes everything from you, your trust, your name, your peace, you can still reclaim power without losing your soul. Because real strength isn't in revenge, it's in restoring what they tried to take from you. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever been told to move on when all you wanted was fairness, remember this silence doesn't mean defeat, it means control. Learn from Ethan's story from mine sometimes. The best revenge is showing up every day and living better than they ever imagined you could. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever seen someone's true colors only after loss? Do you believe in forgiveness or justice first? Share your thoughts below. Your story might help someone else heal. And if this story moved you, save this video, leave a comment, and subscribe, because somewhere out there, another person is fighting their own silent battle. And your voice might be the reminder that truth always finds its way home. Because in the end, silence doesn't hide power. Silence is power.